All righty, folks. Hello, hello. We're going to get started with our keynote speaker for today. All right, I want to raise of hands. Where are my small businesses at? There they are. Who is interested in scaling their businesses, growing their business? Love that. That's why we're here, to get all this awesome knowledge. So our keynote speaker today is Danni Eickenhorst. And Ike, who's not speaking, but he also works for Hustle Hospitality Group, because scaling is all about hustling. So we're super excited about Danni being here. They are the folks behind Steve's Hot Dogs. Who knows Steve's Hot Dogs? The Fountain on Locust. Yeah? Well, I'll definitely let you take it away and tell us about what you do.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you. Can you guys hear me okay? Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm a big fan of STL Startup Week. You know, we've had a few businesses ourselves, and being an entrepreneur can be very lonely at times, and I love the connections and resources that STL Startup Week is providing for entrepreneurs. My name is Danni Eickenhorst, and I am the CEO of Hustle Hospitality. Again, we are the hospitality company behind Steve's Hot Dogs, the Fountain on Locust, Steve's Meltdown, and an event space called the Stardust Speakeasy above the Fountain on Locust. When I first began my entrepreneurial journey, I would say that I never thought I would be at the helm of something so large, so meaningful to the community, and so successful. But today I am not here to talk to you at all about my successes. I'm going to share with you my failures, because I have a lot of them, and I would like for you guys to be able to avoid them. I think that this isn't really my personal elevator pitch that I give to people, for sure. So this is getting real. But I started out as a less than awesome leader, and I've come a long way. And because of that, we have an amazing team that we have built, and I'll tell you all about them today. In my presentation, I'm going to share some real-life lessons, some actionable steps, some books that you guys can read if you want to dig into this some more, some actual services and people that can help you as you scale your business, people that have helped us, and more. So at the end of this presentation, there's going to be a QR code, and you guys can scan that and get my entire slide deck and all of the resources along with it. So my entrepreneurial journey had humble roots, to say the least. In 2007, I was a single mom. And in early 2008, Marcus and I got married early that year. And later in the year, we had our first child together. When our child was 6 weeks old, I was getting ready to go back from maternity leave. We both worked for a mortgage company together. We were executives. I was over community outreach, and he was the director of operations. And first I'll say that I think technically I was his boss, and maybe in title I still am, but that is not the case. We are partners in everything, and every success that I'm going to talk about in this presentation has his DNA all over it. He's a big part of why we are able to do what we do. I'm just the one that talks about it. So when I was about to come back from maternity leave, our boss asked us to give them a phone call, and this sort of starts our journey. And it was right as the economy was about to shift. He saw the writing on the wall and was really concerned about what that was going to do to our industry. And so he said he was going to take a job somewhere else and shut down our company. So I had 6 weeks of unpaid maternity leave, and I'm coming back to no job for our entire family. And so it was a really, really scary time for us. So the first thing we did was that we immediately called our parents and asked for advice. The next thing we did was we hit the road and found jobs immediately. So Marcus went out the door and came back a few hours later with 2 jobs. One was a part-time accounting job. That was what his degree was in. And the other was a part-time job washing cars at Waterway Car Wash. And I remember thinking, like, this is the moment that I fell deeply in love with my brand new husband, because I saw him go from, put his ego down and go from director of operations of a luxury boutique mortgage firm to chapped hands in the dead of winter washing cars to make sure that we were okay. So I went and I took a job. My first job was a secretarial gig just to pay the bills. I was making about half of what I'd made, but it was something, and it gave us some breathing room to find the next chapter. And what was interesting is, even though we were C-suite executives at that time, or high-level executives, as I hit the bricks and tried to find a new job, I couldn't find anything remotely equal that would accept me, because I hadn't finished my bachelor's degree. I was one of those people that had gone to school and worked my way through it, and every job I had, I did pretty well, and I kept getting promoted. And so at some point, it made more sense for me to focus on the opportunities in front of me than to finish up those last few classes, and I focused on work. So I decided to go back to school and finish those classes, and I enrolled in Fontbonn's accelerated program of study. And it's funny that being laid off creates a lot of different emotions in you, even if it's not your fault and you didn't do anything wrong. You feel a little bit worthless, you feel a little bit disposable, and I think the thing that we really felt was determined to never, ever allow us to be dependent on one source of income ever again. So that was the moment where we decided that we needed to have a little more control of our own destiny. And thus began our entrepreneurial journey. So this is a terrible website, but this is my first website that I ever built, and I have like a special place in my heart. This was our first company, textbooks. When I enrolled at Fontbonn, we were put into 6-week cohorts, and you would take a class. And what I noticed is that every 6 weeks we had to buy brand new textbooks, and at the end of the 6 weeks, we would have to sell them, and all the students kind of took a bath on the value of those books. So what we decided to do is we bought everybody their textbooks, and we rented them to them for half the cost of buying it. At the end of the class, they would give us the books back, and I'd rent them to the next class and the next class. Fontbonn didn't really change their books very often, so it worked out really nicely. And that was what paid a big chunk of my tuition and got us through college. And it was one of those businesses that really ran its course, like Amazon.com. It made it so that it wasn't really relevant anymore, but it paid for our tuition. And I guess it's my first entrepreneurial failure that I couldn't pivot it, but I learned so much from that initial journey, for sure. In college, though, I was studying organizational studies and organizational psychology, and my professors realized that I was a gifted writer and started hiring me for freelance writing gigs. I would write website copy and articles and things like that for them. I would ghostwrite books. And so when I finished my degree, I took my first job at the Salvation Army. And it felt like a chance to do some good after several years of working in a pretty smarmy and gross industry with mortgages. It felt like I could do something that I'm naturally sort of a fundraiser and a community builder. It was a really nice alignment for sure. So it seemed like a good fit to get my feet wet, and I could be a storyteller. 6 days into my job at the Salvation Army, the tornado in Joplin happened, and I was deployed to be their PIO, their public information officer. So I was on the ground with a sat phone and a backpack, and I stayed there for most of the summer. And the first couple days, I've never coordinated media in my life, and I'm coordinating media with Anderson Cooper and Bill O'Reilly and like all these people that were on the ground doing stories. And at the same time, I'm telling stories. And it was really interesting because you're showing up on somebody's worst day of their life and being like, hey, can you tell me your story? It felt a little weird for me. So I started utilizing social media whenever I could get a signal to help with actually getting them relief. So if somebody told me their story, I'd listen for the thing that they needed help on: water, electricity, whatever the thing is, medical treatment, and I would use social media to get them aid. The other thing I used social media for, and this is early days, was fundraising. And this was back when Facebook didn't even have pages. We had profiles. So I had a little Salvation Army profile, and I was friending everybody, and I was on Twitter, and that was about all that there was. But this was the first time Salvation Army in the history of the global organization had ever used social media for fundraising in that way. And so people sort of took notice, and I was asked to start teaching Salvation Army and other nonprofits globally how to use social media for response and for fundraising. And this is when I basically started to have my star on the rise. Within my first month there, I was Employee of the Month. That's when he awarded it. It was super fun. And that was a great moment in my life. And I ended up spending a lot of time there and really being able to make my mark. 18 months later, Great Rivers Greenway approached me and asked me to become the head of communications there. And I knew their impact on the community, how they're able to connect communities that are previously not connected, and how they're able to drive economic development and provide transportation alternatives for people that want or need them. And so I immediately said yes. And it was an awesome opportunity to help with the City Arch River project and to literally have my hand in things that were shaping St. Louis. During that time, I helped the governor with a campaign on, the state of Missouri had been awarded an award for best trails in the United States. And so I helped consult on a campaign for 100 Missouri miles. And it helped drive tourism to the state for trails. And it also helped get people in Missouri out on the trails and talking about it on social media and driving interest in this like natural jewel that we have here in our state. And so I was surprised one evening when I was invited to dinner at the governor's mansion, and he surprised me with an award. And that is really when, between that and what was going on with the Salvation Army, people started to take note of what I was doing. So I started speaking, consulting, teaching digital marketing at UMSL. And when Proposition P passed and they were able to move forward with City Arch River and they were able to expand the arch, that's when I decided that maybe I should take my skills and start my own company so that I can help more organizations further their mission. And I tell you all of this to tell you how I became the smartest person in the room when it came to social media and marketing and public outreach. And being the smartest person in the room is like something I never want to be again. Never, never, never. It's poison. But that's sort of my journey, was how I got there. So I launched Blank Page Consulting in 2014. It was a boutique agency to help nonprofits and government organizations and startups. And as it grew, Marcus joined me, and together we would help companies stabilize operationally and financially. And then once they were stable, we would help them with their marketing, because we saw a lot of times people would market before they had a stable company and they were just throwing money away. And the work poured in. A lot of people, thankfully, wanted to work with me. And so it was clear that we needed help, and I brought in some friends, 3 of the most talented marketers that I could find to help me. And this was an interesting time, because not only was I the smartest person in the room, but I was also like a first-time boss. And so this is, you put those two together and it's sort of a deadly combination. And there is a book called Multipliers, and it's one of my favorites. And in it, she talks about 2 types of leaders. One is a multiplier, and that's a person that's able to get 2 times the potential and talent and quality of work and all of these things out of their team. The other is called a diminisher, and they really quash talent, and they don't get the best work out of everybody. They don't really motivate them, and that was me. So as the work rolled in, my employees looked to me for direction and for strategy on every case that we had and every client that we had. And rather than seeking their input, I hoarded all the control, because in my mind, the company was built around my brain, and I didn't know what else I had to really market at that time. It was a weird moment in my life. So I really gave direction, but I didn't seek their input, and I always sort of assumed that I knew best. While opportunities continued to come our way because of my reputation, that didn't mean that our company shouldn't have evolved with their input and become something greater. So your businesses may be the same. It might be built on your talent or your passion or your innovation or something that you're very, very interested in doing. But the challenge for you is to figure out how you can leverage the talent of everybody else in the room to make it something even greater. When people tell you that you're a guru and praise you as I was in that moment, you can come to think of your talent as something that's innate and special to you. And that happened to me, and I was an idiot. When I gave our team a task, if they didn't approach it as I would innately, psychically, I don't know how they would have approached it like I did, I was always disappointed in their performance. I didn't really have the words to teach them to think like I thought. And so I just, I was of no help. I was just constantly disappointed. So that led to my next diminisher behavior. I would take the work back and do it myself so that we could hit the deadlines and save them from their impending failure, and rather than teaching them how to think like me, which led to total and utter burnout. So I was personally had my hand in 20 client files. I was driving all of the strategy and all of the tactics that there was, and barely utilizing all the magic that they could have contributed to the project. They were truly brilliant people. And because of the breadth of clients that we had, nonprofits, restaurants, doctors, automotive groups, it seemed like everywhere I went in my life, I was embedded with one of my clients. I'd go out to eat, I'd think about my client. I'd go to the doctor, I'd think about my client. And I just could never turn it off. And it was extremely difficult. I could really never clock out. And on top of that, I'd seen the way that many agencies overcharge and underdeliver for their clients. And so I was determined to do something different. And so instead I was undercharging and overworking, all in the name of trying to find some ROI. So eventually Blank Page Consulting burned out. It fizzled out. My employees got new jobs elsewhere. I supported them in that because it clearly wasn't working. I couldn't see the big picture anymore, and they certainly couldn't, because if I couldn't, no one could. And so I restructured the company so that I became a fractional CMO. I chose my 4 favorite clients. I worked in office with them. That was it. That's all I had. And that sort of worked really well for where I was in leadership in that moment. And for the next few years, I began what I call my hibernation phase. I was still succeeding professionally, but I intentionally removed myself from leadership roles. I knew that I was a bad leader and that I was a diminisher and that I couldn't really get the best out of people. I just assumed I was sort of a lost cause. But since that time, I've been a student of great leadership. I have had the opportunity to work for some amazing people that have multiplied my talents, that made me feel seen and made me feel heard. They really showed me what great leadership is. I have read all the books and listened to all the podcasts, and I have gone and I have studied and done the work. I realize that natural leadership doesn't always come naturally, and so I put in the work to figure out how to do it better. And thankfully, I've been able to grow a few companies in the meantime, and I've certainly learned a lot about what it means to be a good leader. Today, I'm the CEO of Hustle Hospitality, and we have a team of over 100 very talented individuals that work for us, and by the end of the month, probably like 130. And I've got 2 of the most incredible partners that a girl could ask for. When Matt asked me to speak, I thought about what I had to offer, and it was really clear to me that I wanted to help all y'all avoid your dark night of your professional soul where you did terrible leadership crimes to people and had to figure it out. So I thought I would just share with you guys basically the 8 most important things that I now do to help really get the most out of our team, make them feel seen and heard, and help them be a part of building our organization. So I will share with you some golden rules and best practices and a few resources throughout this. This sounds simple, talk less and listen more, but not everybody can do it. And at Hustle Hospitality, Steve's and the Fountain, we really work to try not to give directives. We work to facilitate discussion. We listen to suggestions from our employees. We debate decisions. We ask a lot of questions. And throughout this process, what happens is that people get to understand how my brain works because of all the questions and discussions that are happening, and I get to understand how their brains work. And they become more confident in understanding what we expect from them. And when it goes out to do, the next thing that they have to do, they understand where we're coming from, and I understand where they're coming from as well. And so we have a very talented person on our team. She's just lovely. Her name's McKenna, and she assists us with operations and personnel, and she has a natural knack for the HR side of things, but she didn't have any formal training. So we got her formal training and support in that area. And when we were doing just a quiz, we kind of sometimes will send out a survey to our employees to get a handle on what are things that we're missing that you guys need help on. How are your managers managing you? What are areas of concern that you have, and that sort of thing. And so when a survey came back recently after she'd gone through some training and she was still new, I it showed us that one of our leaders, sort of behind the scenes, was being a really terrible leader, and he was violating multiple policies. And it was to the point that I would have recommended that we terminate, but instead of recommending anything, I just said, "What do you think, HR?" And sat back and waited, and she kind of froze for a minute. She said, "All right, okay." And I just knew that she had the framework from our conversations, and we'd had enough conversations that she knew how we think. I was confident she would arrive at the right decision, and she did. She gave us her recommendation, and she guided us through a leadership change that day. And later that night, I got a text message from her that just said, "Thank you for trusting in me. Today was a big day in my career, and I feel so much more confident in my role here." But the better thing and the cooler thing, I think, that came out of it is a few weeks later, she felt even more confident, and she kept sort of jumping in on these HR issues and making great choices. And when she first came to us, she was somebody that was like, "I'm kind of okay just sticking in this role. And I'm not really interested in growth, just I want to get here and be good." And I thought, okay, I don't know what to do with that. I always love when people want to grow. But I was like, okay, sounds good. And then a few weeks later, she came to me and said, "I'm ready to grow." She said, I would like for you to write me a path from operations manager to COO. And for me, there's nothing better than that level of investment. By shutting up and listening to my employees and then engaging them in debate and conversation and trusting them and empowering them to make these decisions, they become rooted in your organization, and that's where you find your cornerstone leaders that you're going to build your company on. Pour into your people. So this may seem like a no-brainer, but I am part of a number of mastermind groups locally and nationwide, and I have seen firsthand that this is the area that most leaders fail at. Some leaders, at all levels of leadership, some leaders do not want to pour into their people all of the knowledge and everything that they have because they're worried that they will sort of bypass them on the leadership chain. And some are afraid that they're going to take that information and go to a competitor. And others just say, "I don't have the time." But I'm going to tell you that there is literally nothing that could be a better use of your time than pouring absolutely everything you know from your brain into everyone that works for you. And lucky for you, even if you are stretched for time, there are a ton of tools that you can use to make this happen. Does anybody here use Loom? Yes, it's awesome. So I have resting bitch email. So I'm always like getting stuff done, forget to say good morning or like whatever, And so I forget my niceties and my tone can come across wrong. So I've become really dependent on Loom. It saves me a lot of time. It's just the camera looks at you, you can record your screen, you can do a combination of both, whatever, and you can send it with a link that embeds it in the email so they can watch the video in your email. You can embed it in a text so they can watch it in the text. And it's $8 a month, and for me, it's invaluable. And so here what you're seeing is that we have a gal that works for us whose name is Bryn, and she is amazing. And she was doing some design work for us. I've handled Steve's Hot Dogs marketing on and off for 8 years. The brand is my brand. It's a combination of Steve's personality and my personality. And the way everything looks is my preference and my gut and my research, and that's kind of a hard thing to put into words sometimes. So when Bryn was working for us, she's sort of this prime example of somebody that can have a big impact when you pour into them. She started with us, she was a SLU student working at the Fountain on Locust, and she had a double major, government and communications. And when she graduated, she wasn't quite ready to just jump into her career just yet. She didn't have clarity on where she wanted to go. And so she agreed to work for the Fountain on Locust a little bit longer as a manager and just sort of take a gap year before she jumped into her career. But while she worked for us, a marketing position came open, and she raised her hand and she just said, "Hey, I feel like this is my family. I love being here. It would be really cool if I could use my degree here. Could I take that, or can I try the job?" And I was just like, oh my gosh, yeah, she's amazing. She's one of those people that's a force of nature, who's naturally talented, and they're a quick study. But she was relatively new to everything that I'm doing, and so I knew that I would need to pour into her. So I meet with her weekly, and I do things like this, where she initially does a design, and I'll just make tiny tweaks to show her my preferences visually. And between those and our little one-offs, she has become invaluable. And what's cool about Loom is that I don't have to retrain her. I say everything I mean to say the first time. She can just keep rewatching the videos if she wants to. The other cool thing is that if it's something that's not going to change, I can download those videos and put them into a private YouTube list, and thus is the training course for the next marketing manager when Bryn gets promoted. And so it's just such a useful tool. But luckily for me, about a month ago, Bryn was able to step in full-time finally into marketing for Steve's and the Fountain on Locust, and she's taken everything off my plate in that area, and I cannot tell you how much that has changed my life. What a weight that is to have off my shoulders, because in addition to running all these companies, I was doing all their marketing too, and to be able to allow her to step in has been nothing short of a miracle. But in that month, it has allowed me to focus on growth, which is the thing that I care about. And we've been able to move forward to major initiatives, and in a couple of days I'll be announcing the new location of Steve's Hot Dogs. And that's just because I got my time back. so that is the power of pouring into people. So I say give them your best energy. When you're busy pouring into people, you have to remember to fill up your own cup or you'll have nothing left to give. And I'll tell you a little bit about how I arrived at this. I was born with a genetic condition that causes me a ton of pain, and it's debilitating, a lot of mobility issues. And a couple of years ago during the pandemic, I also got Lyme disease. And when you add Lyme disease on top of what I already have, I spent most of the last 3 years on a cane, with a walking boot, or with some sort of braces, just on and off. It's debilitating. And it makes it really hard to run a hot dog empire when you can't walk. So when I felt like Western medicine was no longer providing me with all the options that I really felt like were suitable for me, I decided to take as much of the control I could into my own hands and figure out what I could do to support my health. And I looked at the mind-body connection, and I said, hey, if I can get myself in like peak mental and spiritual condition, that can't hurt my health, why not try? And so I began this journey that I call the year I got woo-woo and got my first tattoo. So nutrition, exercise, and meditation became first and foremost priorities in my life, and self-exploration was a priority. I studied Wim Hof and began taking cold showers to reduce inflammation and increase blood flow. I studied spiritual masters and found peace. I learned to surrender to the universe. I began fasting, and I started attending sound baths and gentle yoga sessions. And I began working with an energy practitioner to release stuck traumas and energy. I learned to linger longer in moments of gratitude. That was a big one. I took a trip for 5 days to Florida to study under one of my heroes in meditation, and just to meditate with him and a dear friend for 5 days. And I came home so zen that I could no longer be productive. I thought maybe I left my edge in Florida. And I was a little scared, but not obviously too bothered, because it took a few days. It was lovely. And I just got back from Sedona, Arizona 2 days ago, doing the exact same thing all over again. I continue to do this because I saw that when I showed up with my best energy as my best self, in gratitude, with good intentions, leaving behind some of my personal baggage and no longer letting fear get behind the wheel in my life, that the energy everywhere changed. The general energy in our workplace was already good, but it got better. And even on our hardest days, Hustle Hospitality is a pretty joyful place to work, but it got better. I saw things change because I changed. And that wasn't my intent. I was just doing it for my health, but I will never go back. By taking the time to fill my own bucket spiritually and physically, I was able to pour into everybody else's cups in new ways. And cool things started to happen. People started to grow all around me and wanting to grow, and they still do. And people started seeking us out as a place they wanted to work for because of the energy they felt when they were around us. And our employees started bringing their best leaders to us and saying that, hey, like, it's a great place to work, you need to work here. So suddenly we became talent magnets for these leadership roles. And in this hiring environment, that's nothing short of a miracle, So I would encourage you guys to take stock as you're growing your companies. What are you doing to fill your bucket? What are you doing to show up your best for yourself so that you can show up your best for everybody else? Something that we are super good at is praising our people publicly, and we're striving to get even better at it. We are always on the hunt for good behavior. whenever possible, I try to call out somebody's good behavior right to their face when I can in that moment. When it's coming from the owner, it means something special. But I know that we're growing, right? And that I can't be there for every good moment all the time. And so whenever, we have messaging platforms for both restaurants, and I will call out people's good behavior in those channels. And it's never something like, you rock. It's like, hey, thank you for doing this thing. Here's how it's impacting everybody. I really sincerely appreciate you, because I want them to understand it means something if I say it. And it's cool because it does two things. It models the great behavior that they just did, and it shows new employees, this is the standard, this is what I want to see. But it also models the act of praising for my leaders. And I think that building a culture of praise and support is powerful. You want your team to continue that in your absence. As you scale your business, you can't be there at all times. You want your team to continue to lift each other up whenever possible. Being praised boosts the employee confidence. It builds their connection and their loyalty to you as their leader. And it's just so important. One thing that we implemented at the Fountain on Locust is our fill a bucket board. I did that like my first month there. I just put a whiteboard downstairs. And at first I would seed it with thank yous from me for things that I saw. But pretty quickly, they just took it over and they ran with it. And every day people are giving each other thank yous for specific things. There's welcome notes for people. I mean, it's just full. And we erase it once a month. And we take a picture and we share it so everybody can always go back and look at it. Every Monday or Tuesday, my favorite thing to do is to grab a cup of coffee and go downstairs and read their love notes to each other. Because I know that they're taking care of each other in my absence, and that we are building a culture of support. And this has been massive, because even if the employees aren't necessarily attached to me because we're on opposite schedules or whatever, they are attached to each other in a way that makes them sticky to our organization. A multiplier or a strong leader always challenges their team to go beyond their comfort zone. And I am constantly looking for the talent in my team members. What are they really, really good at? And trying to put them in their strength zone. And so I'm always giving people new tasks, new opportunities, letting them try on different things to see if it's a fit. And that's not necessarily why people come to a restaurant. Sometimes they just want to go serve, or like make a couple drinks. But it's funny how many people that came here just to serve are now some of my best leaders that we have. Another way that we challenge our people is in our monthly leadership meeting. We ask two questions. We go all the way around the table and we say, what is something that you love about working here, or something that you love about the company? And they go around. And I do that because it starts it on a positive note. And what is one challenge you are facing at work? Caveat, you got to bring a solution. And we do that for a couple of reasons. It tells us, what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong right now that needs some work? But the other thing is, if you're a person that just comes and like drops problems on my desk, I'm not going to be a big fan of, I'm not going to love working with you. You might not be a great fit. Like, I want everybody to take some ownership. And so I'm trying to train people to think critically about what's going on in the organization, for them to take some ownership over some of the issues that we have. And so this allows them to sort of put their DNA on the fix. So as the company grows, they are helping us in real time make organizational and policy shifts and changes that make work better, and they get to see that that was because of them. So this is simple and anybody can implement it, and what we do here also is we just literally go around the circle, problem, solution. And the solution doesn't have to be great, it just needs to be a start, something we can talk about. But we literally just make a list, and then I go back to it later, but we don't debate everything right there at the table, and it's super powerful. Something else we've begun doing is investing in our team. Working in restaurants is hard, working in multiple is harder, and when I realized what my energetic shift had done for me, I wondered aloud what would happen if I seeded this amongst my company. If I took a few key leaders and helped them raise their energy, what would that do for everybody in our company? You look at, the hospitality industry in general, and it's hard. You're always on. People expect a lot of you. It's physically demanding work. And so I offered this up to some of our employees and just said, are any of you interested? Would you want to? And we had quite a few raise their hand. And so a few members of our leadership team and I get together every other week with a meditation consultant named Deanna Danger, and it's inexpensive. It's something that you guys can definitely afford to give your team. And we have a private session where she guides us through meditation, and they help tap into their inner peace, and they're sort of developing their own coping skills for how difficult our jobs really are. And I highly recommend that more bosses give this time to their team if they can. It's inexpensive and it's amazing. And for me, that time is sacred because it's good for me, but I like watching their growth journey. I like being on it with them. And I also realize that I won't always be able to do that as we grow. So I'm just trying to put these things in place that support them as we grow. And I know that someday when some of them leave me, they're leaving better than I found them with some lifelong skills that will help them cope with whatever's next. One thing that we do really well is we teach our team to lead. Like I said, and I think you could pick up from my background, leadership's not natural to everybody. It doesn't come naturally. So take the time to codify what you expect from your people. Writing it down is key. We give every leader in our company a 30, 60, 90-day plan to help them onboard into leadership. Some of that is shadowing other leaders and learning from them. Some of that is literally studying leadership. And we meet with them every 30 days and make sure that they're moving through it. We answer any questions. We kind of course correct if they do something wrong. And then for things that maybe a new leader is not feeling very comfortable with, like discipline and termination, we give them guides so that they explain not just what we want done, but how and why, so they can think like we think. And we give them scripts and tools until it feels natural. Something else we provide them, is access to an audible.com account with a couple of leadership books that are relevant to their roles. We have a physical library of books, of the same exact books, so however you want to digest it is fine. For my really busy people in my life that can't read a book or listen to an Audible, I have written summaries of the most important books. And if you look here, I even recorded myself reading the summary. I'm like, there's no excuse. You got to get this information in your brain. But so I've got a QR code in here for you guys to access it. I did sort of tailor it for the hospitality industry, but it's powerful stuff, and it's a very long book. So this is a useful tool. So teach them how you want them to lead. It may seem like a ton of work, and it is, but it's absolutely worth it. And as you grow, you've got this like toolbox of tools that you can continue to use to pour into future leaders. As a leader, you need to be able to effectively communicate your enthusiasm, your purpose, your vision, and what you want for the future for your people. And your ability to do this is going to be make or break. It gets people interested, but it also lets them see their opportunity for growth within your organization. And this is a way that you can secure those lifelong leaders to your company. I'm going to cast my vision for you as if you guys were applying for a job at Hustle Hospitality. This is what I would say to you. I would say, so we started Hustle Hospitality at the height of the pandemic. We named it Hustle because we are scrappy. And if you look at how we started from nothing, and we have grown an awful lot. And we are, we keep STL at the center of our name because we want to remember what we're here for. Our mission is to feed the St. Louis region in multiple ways. We're feeding the St. Louis region through unique and innovative foods that drive a conversation. We literally feed the St. Louis region through purposeful charitable give back. We feed the hungry every week at Steve's Hot Dogs. We feed the St. Louis region through active community outreach. So if you come work for us, you'll have the opportunity to serve on the boards in our different neighborhoods. We are good neighbors, and we're working to make our neighborhoods a better place, and that's an opportunity for you. We also are feeding the St. Louis region by investing in the talented people that give their time to us. We are very much aware that it is our faithful employees that give us our time and the community that's got our back that made all of this possible. So everything I do is about that. You guys are my big why. So my vision is to create an organization and a universe of companies that is big enough that you can come and grow within and never have to leave if you don't want to. I want it to be that you never have to outgrow my company, that I can keep up with you and keep creating new opportunities for you to stay with us. I am continuously growing and expanding our company, and I see an opportunity for you here. So tell me, where do you see yourself in our organization in the next 5 years? That's my pitch. You know, I tell people what we've got. I'm telling them where we're going. There's growth here. There's an opportunity for you. And that's how we get our leaders secured, and they understand right away from it's not manipulation, it's the truth. This is what we live. And it pulls people into our organization and gets us all on the same page, and it gets people just as fired up as we are. Here you can see my 5-year plan to $5 million that I presented to my team last year. And thankfully, they got as fired up as I did. And we are well ahead of schedule for that goal because I was able to cast a vision and they knew exactly what their role was and they went to it. As a leader of a growing organization, it is your role to show up with your best energy, to set the course with your vision, but to accept the input and gifts of your team, to encourage your team's buy-in along the way. It's also your role to get beyond your own brilliance and to really buy into the collective intelligence, passion, and talents of your team. Together, you and your team will be unstoppable, and you'll do so much more than you could ever do alone. These are my leaders. I love them all very, very much. And they're just a few of them, but these are the people that I'm pouring into every day, and I would not be here without them. So, I want to make sure that you guys had a few resources. I've said this book 1,010 times because it's my favorite. Culture Code is another excellent leadership book. If you've just got to read 3 in your whole life, these are the ones you should read. Culture Code tells you real stories about culture in different industries, the military, nonprofits, Fortune 500s, and there are things that you can learn that you can bring into your organization at any size that will build a strong culture. And then 5 Levels of Leadership is a great book to give to a new leader, but it's also good if you are a new leader. And even if you're just new to your role in this organization, you're a new leader. You're a leader in title only until you can get everybody to come along with you. And there really are 5 steps and to growing your leadership and getting people to follow and want to work with you. 2 of our secret weapons I always like to share. One is Kelly Pingleton. She is a leadership coach she actually works with some of our up-and-coming leaders and helps them figure out where are their leadership shortcomings, and she helps them sort of shore that up. She's also an HR expert, so when we have a sticky HR situation, we call her and she guides us through what to do. And Deanna Danger is our meditation coach, and they are brilliant. They have private classes for your group. They do virtual and drop-in meditation 2 to 3 times weekly. They are a force of nature and deeply compassionate and worth every penny. Do any of you guys have any questions? Well,
1 second.
oh,
Test.
thank you, Ben. Sorry, I jumped the gun.
Yeah, so first of all, great presentation. I really needed that, and I'm glad that I stuck around for that. But you had mentioned something about you not being a good leader, and I think that I'm in that same boat right now where we're a team of only 6 people, but 3 months ago we were a team of 2 people. And I lead from the front. I try to work the hardest. I get there early. I stay later. But I'm not a good coach yet. So do you think that those books are a good start to that, or is there any other thing of how to teach people the secret sauce of what you have in your head? I'm not really good at writing processes. I'm not a really detailed person. I'm more of I'm just gonna spitball and talk, and hopefully they pick it up, but they're just not picking it up.
I get that. I would say Kelly Pingleton would be a great person for you to talk to just at some point in your life. I've had her work with a number of leaders, and she can help you get past that if you ever want one-on-one coaching, if you feel like these sort of resources aren't hands-on enough. Yeah. I would say start with multipliers, at least the summary. It gives you some really tangible, and you'll see yourself in the book. You know, you'll be like, oh, I do that. It's not intentional, but...
You put that list up, I'm like, yeah, I'm like every one of those things right now. You made me feel
You're like, my bad.
No, but I think that if we can get to that point, like you said, of that turning point of being able to teach what you know, so that you can go and do other things and grow the business.
What I would say is start with one task at a time that you might want to hand off.
Yeah.
and record yourself doing it on Loom and narrate it. And then save it and label it and do your next task of the day until you have a library of things. And hand them off to somebody else in your team, just one thing at a time. I did that I started very small. And with Bryn, I started very small. She was literally not even touching our socials. She was just doing like flyers and tabletops and stuff like that where it wouldn't like cause a PR nightmare, you know?
Right.
But as I wrote press releases, I would record myself for different types of press releases and talk about my distribution strategy. And that way, even if we couldn't be together, I could be writing that down. And it's kind of nice because, you know, she can go back to it over and over and over again, but we can't always be together. She's helping with multiple restaurants. I'm dealing with multiple restaurants. And so that's such a useful tool. I would absolutely say just start with that. Hand off one task.
One task, and then just create that document of all your tasks. So cool. I'm going to start doing that.
Awesome. Anybody else?
I have a question.
Yeah.
We have so many young leaders in the audience, young people who perhaps may not see themselves as leader when we observe them and see their potential. So what would be your advice to an aspiring entrepreneur, someone who is stepping into that leadership role? What tips would you give them?
What would you give him, Marcus? We were just talking about that earlier. He said, I didn't always see myself as a leader. I think, you know, sometimes you're a leader when you just captivate a room and people are listening to you. So I think a lot of us, especially the women in the group, may recognize that people be like, oh, she's awful bossy, you know, or whatever. But people, it's, you know, sometimes you can just have the ear of a group and that makes you a leader by default because people are listening. But I would just say study it, learn how to do it appropriately. You're not going to be great at first, but people get thrust into positions of leadership all the time, well before they have the skills to do so. So don't be too hard on yourself, but know that there are resources you can seek out to get yourself in a better place. And definitely hold on to this presentation. Call me, we'll have coffee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What questions do we have in the room?
Anybody?
Thank you for your presentation.
Sure.
So I just joined a startup about a year ago, and as you said, like maybe like someone became a leader before they knew how to be a leader.
Yeah.
So when you're being, when you work with that manager that maybe doesn't have all these different things, what's like the best way to approach them and tell them like, hey, maybe you could do this better, or
And are they above you?
yeah.
That's tough. There is a whole chapter in diminisher or in multipliers about working for a diminisher and how and it lists out like 40 tactics depending on the way that they're diminishing you about that. But I would maybe just say start a book club. Like that's what I've seen a number of organizations do and say, listen, we're getting ready to grow. I see your vision and I'm super excited about where we're going, but I know that as we grow, we're gonna have an awful lot of people and we gotta do this right or we're gonna fizzle out. So would you be up for doing a book club with me or even a summary club? I don't really know, right? And starting to talk that stuff through. I mean, do you feel like you have that kind of a relationship where you can have honest conversations with them? Yeah. I would do that. Yeah, I would absolutely do that. And maybe call Kelly and just have her come out and do like a little assessment on your team and be like, hey, here's areas that can be strengthened because she's an outside person. That was one of the most powerful things when I started Blank Page was that, you know, all the organizations I wanted to help had some level of politics or bureaucracy. And if I worked on the inside, I'd never get anything done. But as an outside consultant, people really hear you because they're paying for you, you know? And so in like a different, more expensive way. And so if you bring in a consultant, sometimes they can be forgiven for saying some things, but they can also just point right to the problem and help you guys get into better shape a lot quicker. Absolutely. There's a book called 7 Levels of Energy Leadership as well that might be good for you.
So you talked about how to like teach your team how to lead. What would you say is like the best way to like have your team as motivated as you are to reach that goal and to like portray and to like, you know, transfer that same energy that you have towards your team?
That's a great question. I think it's a buildup of many things. It's your ability to cast a vision, right? I don't cast it once, set it, forget it. I'm casting it all the damn time. Like every meeting, I'm like, all right, guys, here's where we are, and like here's where we're going, and you've got to help them see where they belong in the picture and what are the opportunities for them. But part of that is every single person that starts with us, although it's harder these days the bigger we get. But I try to make sure somebody somewhere is having the conversation of, hey, what do you want to do with your life? Where do you want to go? And it's okay if it's not with my company in 5 years. That's okay. Do you want to go be a butcher? I'll make sure you get those skills. Like, do you want to do whatever? I might fund your startup. I don't know. But like, tell me so that I know how I can help you in the course of your time with me leave better than you came. And that does a lot of things. But it gets them to a place where they know you know them, that you know what their intentions are, that you're trying to find their best place as you grow. And it gives you a lot of information with which to help them. And so it kind of bonds you in a way that when you're talking these big picture things, they can see themselves in it. And of course, there's monetary stuff and whatever, but that's not always an option when you're growing. You know, you can't always give somebody a 20% raise. So that's where you try to make up for that sometimes as you're growing. You're like, okay, well, I'm obviously going to do what I can to make sure we are paying everybody everything we can. But also there's something about creating a culture where everybody feels empowered and everybody sees where we're going. And for us, we have a really strong family vibe. And so that just creates sort of this automatic buy-in. We legitimately care about our people. It's exhausting. I love them all so much.
I'm wondering if you could give advice about how to become more articulate. You're very good at phrasing things.
Thank you.
And you don't have a lot of filler words. So
Thank
I'm
you.
wondering if you have any advice
Yeah.
about that.
Practice. I really sucked once upon a time. I got very lucky. When I worked at Great Rivers Greenway, they paid for somebody to coach me so that I could be, decent on camera. And still, I was terrible. And I dreaded every time he showed up to our business to teach me because I knew I was going to be really, really bad. But sometimes you just got to keep putting yourself into spaces where you have an opportunity to speak, whether that's like going to Cortex for their networking events and just literally shaking hands and starting a conversation in a really small way. And that was hard for me at one point. And so I would bring along a small posse of friends that maybe they could start the conversation and I could jump in. You know, it's just all these sort of social things you have to get over, and you've just got to put yourself in uncomfortable spaces and keep doing that repeatedly. I have messed up more speeches than I can count, and I'm sure I've had quite a few bad interviews in my life, but now I've got a hang of it, you know? And it's just taken sort of putting yourself in that position over and over and over again. It gets better. And, you know, I practiced this like 5 times before I came today. So I know the material. Yeah, absolutely. I wish there was a silver bullet for that one. All right, you guys. Well, thank you for your time and attention. I appreciate you all very much. I have coupons for all of you if you want to go get something good to eat at one of my restaurants.